Hello friends, this is the question that was asked in the month of July 2025. That is, discuss the procedure of entry into force of any IMO convention after its adoption, state the provisions and its importance towards entry into force of the convention. For a convention of important technical nature, state the general rules, conditions observed by the state for its entry into force, explain the terms accession, signature subject to ratification, acceptance or approval. This carries 16 marks. And let's go through the answer one by one, right, with the help of this tool. Let's go step by step. The first process is to recall the broad process. When IMO adopts any convention, does it immediately come into force worldwide, or do member state needs to show consent? This is the question that is being asked. When IMO adopts a convention, does it immediately come into force, or do member states, the signatories, need to show some consent in terms of signing, in terms of signatures, ratification, acceptance, or accessions, right? So we'll try to answer this, try to structure this answer. General procedure of entry into force, why the provision is important, the special rules, yes. So let's say yes, right. That's right. So after adoption, a state can't just sign immediately, be bound to it. Usually it is either the member state sign the convention and later ratify, accept, approve it through a national legal process, or exceed directly if it didn't sign according to the original open period. So can you tell me what is the difference between signing a convention and ratifying it? So there's a hint to this. Think about whether the signature alone is equal to legally binding, or whether it needs some parliamentary or governmental approval. Like for example, the ballast water treatment convention. It was brought into force, but then will India directly be directly accepted to follow the convention? No, because in India's own legal framework, it has to provide policies. It has to accept the convention. So there are a lot of things, right? So the question here is, uh, do you think signature alone makes it legally binding? So the answer is no. So let's see what is the structure of the answer that follows this question. That's okay. Let's clear it up step by step. So signature, when a state signs a convention, it basically says, I agree to the principle. But just signing doesn't usually make it legally bound. This is what I wanted to say. Again, a ratification, this is the formal step after signature. The state goes through its own national process like the parliament, approval, presidential assent, etc. and then deposits a formal instrument with IMO. That's when it becomes legally bound. So signature is a political commitment and ratification is a legal commitment, right? Now keeping that in mind, why why do we think IMO convention don't come into force immediately after adoption? Why do they wait until enough state ratifies or exceeds? So why do you think they always require a majority? Why don't the IMO convention comes into force? So we are not very sure, right? So the structure of the answer follows. Let's see what it says. Okay, IMO convention dealing in shipping, which is international activity. If only a few states applied a new rule while others didn't, the ship would face confusion and unfair competition. Definitely, where there is no such convention, the some charterer would fly their ships across places which does not have that convention. Why bother getting into those places where the convention is in place? So to make sure the rules are uniform, practical, each convention has an entry into force clause. This clause usually says something like, The convention will come into force after a minimum number of states ratify or exceed, and sometimes those states must represent a certain percentage of the world tonnage. So the rules actually cover most of the global fleet. Example, MARPOL requires ratification of 15 states representing at least 50% of the world tonnage before it entered into force. In case of MARPOL, it required 15 states and representing 50% of the world's tonnage. That way, the rule only starts once there is enough global participation to make it meaningful. Otherwise, it would become meaningless, right? Help you a structure. So let's structure a 16-mark answer, that is procedure, importance, technical rules, definition of accession, signature, ratification, so that we can present our answer to this question, right? Correct. Now let's go step by step. Procedure of entry into force of an IMO convention. Procedure after adoption. After the IMO, through the Assembly of Conference, adopts a convention, it is opened for signature by state for a fixed period of time, that is usually 12 months. So, a 12-month period is given to the member states, and signature symbolizes that the member state agrees to the convention in principle. Now coming to the second part of it, states may show their consent to be bound by signature subject to ratification. They may sign it, and they may also mention subject to ratification, acceptance or approval, followed later by ratification or accession if the state did not sign within the open period. Right? The state then deposits its instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession with the IMO Secretary General. So a state deposits its instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession to the IMO Secretary General, after which there is entry into force clause. Each convention contains a specific provision on when it will enter into the force. Normally it requires a minimum number of ratifications, accessions and representation of minimum percentage of world gross tonnage. Example, MARPOL requires 15 states representing 50% of the world's tonnage, right? Importance of provision ensures that conventions do not enter into force prematurely with very few states. Provides for uniformity and global acceptance, preventing unfair competition or uneven safety standards. Reflect the principle of practicality in international shipping, since rules need worldwide effect to work. Right? Importance of this provision is to ensure the conventions do not enter into force prematurely with every few states. Provides for uniformity and global acceptance, prevent unfair competition or uneven safety standards. Reflect the principle of practicality in international shipping, since rules need worldwide effect to work. Conventions of technical nature. For major technical convention, the rule generally includes a tonnage requirement because state with large merchant fleet must be bound. States observe the principle of genuine acceptance, entry into force only when there is a critical mass of ratification, both in number and in fleet size. This balances state sovereignty with the need of global uniformity in maritime safety and environmental standards. Explanation of key terms. Accession. A state becomes a party to the convention by depositing its instrument of accession, even though it did not sign during the opening period. Effect is the same as the ratification. Signature subject to ratification, acceptance or approval. Signing shows a preliminary agreement, but the convention is not binding until the state completes its domestic procedure and deposits the instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval with IMO. So again, the key terms here are accession. A state becomes party to the convention by depositing its instrument of accession, even though it did not sign during the opening period. Effect is the same as ratification. Signature subject to ratification, acceptance or approval. The signing shows a preliminary agreement, but the convention is not binding until the state completes its domestic procedure, deposits the instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval with the IMO. So you can answer this with an example of MARPOL or SOLAS, that is 15 countries, member states had to be the signatories, which which comprise around 50% of the tonnage, right? So that's how we can answer this question in a structured manner. I hope this video has helped you to getting some understanding as to how to provide a structured answer. I would like you to subscribe to this channel, also like and share with your friends who will be giving exams, FMEO class 1. Thank you very much.